Hello there, and welcome to Deep Sleep Seas. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day, or perhaps you're someone who finds peace in the slow rhythms of the ocean rather than the stillness of silence. Either way, this journey is for you. You have nothing to do but rest. Let your breathing slow, your muscles soften, and your mind drift like kelp swaying in a gentle current. Because tonight we're descending into the shadowed corridors of coral reefs, where an ancient predator waits in patient stillness. We're going to explore the world of moray eels, creatures that have lived in these underwater labyrinths for millions of years, shaping the very architecture of reef life through their presence. These are not the monsters of sailors' tales, but architects of balance, masters of patience, and survivors of an evolutionary journey that stretches back through deep time. From the smallest fingerling hiding in tide pools, to giants that stretch longer than a grown human, moray eels occupy a space in the ocean that few other creatures can claim. Tonight's journey will take you through crevices and caves, past cleaning stations where unlikely friendships bloom, and into the darkness where these serpentine hunters pursue their prey with movements honed over eons. You'll learn of their secret second jaws, hidden in their throats like something from ancient mythology made real. You'll discover why they constantly gape their mouths, not in threat but in breath. You'll understand how these solitary creatures have perfected the art of living in the spaces between, in the gaps and shadows that other fish cannot reach. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you, or spark some curiosity as you drift towards sleep. But that's the wonder of the ocean, isn't it? There's always something more beneath the surface, always another layer of complexity hidden in the blue. Before we begin our descent, if you find these stories relaxing, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next underwater journey. And if you're still awake enough, let me know where in the world you're listening from. I read every comment, and I love knowing that we're all connected by these deep blue stories. Now let your eyes grow heavy. Let the weight of the day dissolve, and let's slip beneath the waves together into the realm of shadows and stone, where moray eels have made their home since long before humans ever glimpsed the sea. Moray eels belong to a family of fishes that has existed for an almost incomprehensible span of time. To understand them, we need to travel back through millions of years, to when the oceans were younger and the continents arranged in configurations that would seem alien to us now. The family Moranidae, as scientists call them, are part of a larger order known as Anguilliformes, which includes more than 800 species of eels found in waters across the entire planet. But moray eels are special, even among this ancient lineage. They diverged from their eel cousins long ago, developing characteristics that would allow them to master a particular niche in the ocean, one that most other predators could not efficiently exploit. While some eels evolved to burrow in sand or mud, and others adapted to hunt in open water or migrate across entire ocean basins, morays chose the labyrinth. They became creatures of crevices and caves, of coral architecture and rocky outcrops, places where their serpentine bodies could wind through passages too narrow for most fish to follow. The story of how they came to be this way is written in their bones. Evolution shaped moray eels by increasing the number of vertebrae in their bodies, rather than simply making each vertebra longer. This gave them incredible flexibility without sacrificing structural integrity. A moray eel can tie itself into knots, wrap around prey, or navigate through a passage barely wider than its own head, all because of this multiplication of skeletal segments along their length. Their elongated form is not unique among fish. Many eels share this basic body plan, but morays refined it to perfection for their lifestyle. They lack the pectoral and pelvic fins that most fish use for maneuvering and stability. Instead, they developed a single continuous fin that runs along their back, wraps around their tail, and continues along their underside. This ribbon of fin allows for smooth, undulating movement through water and tight spaces alike. Watch a moray eel swim, really watch it, and you'll see waves of motion passing down its body like ripples across a pond. Each muscle contraction flows seamlessly into the next, propelling the eel forward with surprising grace despite its lack of conventional fins. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of moray evolution is something we cannot see from the outside. Deep in their throats, morays possess a second set of jaws, the pharyngeal jaws, complete with teeth. This adaptation, which we'll explore in greater detail later, represents one of the most innovative feeding mechanisms in all of vertebrate evolution. Other fish have pharyngeal jaws too, structures derived from the same gill arch bones that all fish possess. But in morays, these jaws became mobile in a way found nowhere else in nature. They can shoot forward from the throat into the mouth cavity, grasp prey, and then retract, pulling the captured animal backward into the esophagus. This feeding innovation may have been what allowed morays to become so successful in reef environments. Coral reefs are complex three-dimensional structures with countless hiding places. A fish fleeing a predator can dart into a hole just wide enough to fit its body, and most pursuers must abandon the chase, but a moray can follow. It can wind into that same crevice, corner its prey, and thanks to its pharyngeal jaws, it doesn't need the open water and suction power that other predatory fish rely on. It can bite and swallow in the tightest confines. The evolutionary history of morays is also written in their geographic distribution. They are found in every ocean, from tropical reefs to temperate rocky shores, and even a few species have adapted to freshwater. The most well-known freshwater moray is a species that lives in some tropical rivers and estuaries, having made the transition from saltwater to fresh over evolutionary time. But the vast majority, over 200 species, remain creatures of the sea, and most prefer the warmth of tropical and subtropical waters where coral reefs flourish. Within the family Moranidae, there are two main subfamilies distinguished by subtle differences in their anatomy. The subfamily Moranidae includes most of the species we commonly think of as moray eels. Their dorsal fin begins near their gill slits and runs the length of their body. The subfamily Euaporiginae, less well known, has species where both the dorsal and anal fins are restricted to the tip of the tail. These anatomical differences may seem minor, but they reflect different evolutionary paths and different ecological strategies. Across all morays, certain themes recur. They are predominantly carnivorous, feeding on fish, crustaceans, and cephalopods. They are mostly nocturnal, emerging from their daytime refuges after sunset to hunt. They are solitary, each eel defending a territory centered on a particular crevice or cave. And they are patient, capable of remaining motionless for hours, waiting for prey to make the fatal mistake of passing within striking distance. The fossil record of moray eels is frustratingly sparse. Eels in general do not fossilize well. Their bodies are mostly soft tissue and cartilage, with relatively delicate bones that seldom survive the processes that create fossils. But from the species alive today, from comparing their DNA and their anatomical features, scientists have been able to piece together a rough history. Moray eels are ancient, their lineage stretching back at least tens of millions of years, possibly much longer. They survived mass extinctions, climate shifts, the rise and fall of coral reef systems across geological time. They adapted and diversified, spreading across the world's oceans, each species finding its own particular niche. Today we can see the results of that long evolutionary journey in the incredible diversity of moray eels. Some species are barely longer than your forearm when fully grown, delicate creatures with intricate patterns of spots and stripes. Others grow to lengths of 3 meters or more, massive predators capable of taking down octopuses and large fish. Some have sharp, needle-like teeth for grasping slippery prey. Others have developed blunt, molar-like teeth for crushing the shells of crabs and mollusks. This diversity in form and function reflects the many different ways that morays have found to make a living in the reef ecosystem. As you relax and let these images drift through your mind, imagine the passage of time on a scale almost too vast to comprehend. Millions of years of small changes, of favorable mutations spreading through populations, of species branching apart and occupying new niches. The moray eels alive today are the latest chapter in a story that began in ancient seas, and that story is still being written with each new generation hatched from drifting larvae, with each eel that stakes out a territory in a coral crevice and begins the patient work of hunting and surviving. To truly understand moray eels, we need to examine them closely, to look at the specific anatomical features that make them so perfectly adapted to their shadowy existence. Start with their shape, that unmistakable serpentine form. A moray eel's body is essentially a long, muscular cylinder, tapering gradually from head to tail. There are no abrupt changes in diameter, no distinct separation between head, trunk, and tail as we see in most fish. This smooth, continuous form allows the eel to slip through narrow openings without catching on obstacles. The head of a moray is large relative to its body, housing powerful jaw muscles and a surprisingly large brain for a fish. Their skull is elongated, and their mouth extends far back, almost to the point where their gills open. This extended mouth is not just for show, it's a functional necessity given their feeding mechanism. The jaws themselves are hinged in a way that allows for a very wide gape, useful when tackling large prey items. Now let's talk about their skin. Moray eels are completely scaleless. Their skin is smooth to the touch, almost silky in some species, but it is not unprotected. Instead of scales, morays secrete a thick layer of mucus that covers their entire body. This mucus serves multiple purposes, and its importance cannot be overstated. First, it provides a protective barrier against parasites and pathogens that thrive in the warm waters of coral reefs. The mucus of some species even contains mild toxins that discourage parasites from taking hold. Second, the mucus reduces friction as the eel moves through tight spaces. Imagine trying to navigate a narrow, rocky passage. Any roughness or friction could cause injury or slow you down. The mucus layer acts like a lubricant, allowing the eel to glide smoothly through gaps that would otherwise abrade or catch its skin. For species that burrow in sand, the mucus also causes sand grains to stick to the sides of their burrows, essentially cementing the burrow walls and making them more permanent and stable. The mucus also gives some morays their characteristic coloration. The green moray eel, one of the most recognizable species, is not actually green. Its skin is dark gray or brown, but it secretes a thick yellowish mucus that, when mixed with the underlying pigmentation, creates the vibrant green color we associate with the species. This is not mere decoration. The yellow mucus is particularly effective at protecting the eel from bacteria and parasites in its environment. Beneath that mucus layer, moray skin is remarkably thick compared to other eels, with a high density of specialized cells called goblet cells in the epidermis. These cells are factories for mucus production, working constantly to maintain that protective coating. When a moray is injured or stressed, mucus production can increase dramatically, providing extra protection during vulnerable times. Now let's consider one of the most distinctive and often misunderstood features of moray eels, their constant mouth opening. If you've ever seen a moray eel in an aquarium or while diving, you've probably noticed this behavior. The eel sits in its crevice with its mouth opening and closing rhythmically, exposing rows of sharp teeth. It looks threatening, like the eel is preparing to bite, ready to attack anything that comes near. But this interpretation could not be further from the truth. Moray eels are opening and closing their mouths to breathe. Unlike most fish, which can pump water over their gills while keeping their mouths relatively closed, morays have a respiratory system that requires this constant pumping motion. Their gill openings are small and circular, located far back on the sides of their head, well behind where their mouths end. This unusual gill placement is related to their elongated body plan and the reduction of gill arch structures that occurred during their evolution. Because their gills are positioned this way, and because they lack large opercula, the bony covers that most fish use to pump water across their gills, morays must create water flow by actively opening and closing their mouths. Water enters through the open mouth, passes over the gills, and exits through those small circular openings on the flanks. It's a constant process, happening every few seconds, and it continues as long as the eel is alive. So when you see a moray with its mouth agape, teeth visible, it's not threatening you. It's simply breathing, an action as automatic and necessary as your own breath moving in and out of your lungs right now as you listen to these words. Let's move to their eyes. Moray eels have relatively small eyes compared to their head size, and their vision is not particularly acute, especially in low light conditions. This might seem like a disadvantage for a predator, but morays have evolved to rely much more heavily on other senses. Their eyes are sufficient for detecting movement and general shapes, for navigating their reef environment in daylight, but when it comes to hunting, vision takes a back seat to their other sensory capabilities. Chief among these is their sense of smell, which is extraordinarily well developed. Moray eels have specialized nasal structures, including tubular nostrils that project slightly from the snout in many species. These nostrils are not just for passive smell detection. Morays actively pump water through them, sampling the chemical environment of their surroundings. Dissolved compounds from potential prey items, the faint trace of a fish hiding in a nearby crevice, the chemical signature of a wounded animal. All of this information flows into the eel's nostrils and is processed by a relatively large olfactory region of the brain. This acute sense of smell, allows morays to hunt effectively even in complete darkness. Many species are primarily nocturnal, emerging from their daytime refuges only after the sun has set and the reef is cloaked in darkness. In these conditions, vision is nearly useless, but smell becomes paramount. The eel moves slowly through the reef, sampling the water, following scent trails to their source. When it detects promising chemical signals, it investigates more closely, perhaps waiting near a hole where a fish has hidden, or slowly approaching a rocky outcrop where an octopus might be sheltering. Some species have taken this reliance on smell to interesting extremes. Certain morays are rarely seen swimming actively through the reef. Instead, they position themselves in a crevice with just their head protruding and wait. They wait for hours if necessary, motionless except for that rhythmic opening and closing of the mouth to breathe. They are sampling every bit of water that passes by, waiting for the chemical signature of prey to drift past on the current. When it does, the eel will slowly emerge, following that scent trail like a bloodhound on land, until it locates and captures its target. Another important anatomical feature is the lateral line system, a sense organ found in most fish but particularly well developed in eels. The lateral line consists of a series of specialized cells arranged in lines along the sides of the body that can detect minute vibrations and pressure changes in the water. When a fish swims nearby, even if it's hidden from view, it creates tiny disturbances in the surrounding water. The moray's lateral line can detect these disturbances, giving the eel a kind of tactile awareness of its surroundings that extends beyond its body. This sense works even in complete darkness and murky water. A moray can feel the presence of potential prey or predators without seeing them, can sense the approach of a diver's hand reaching too close to its crevice, can navigate through complex reef structures by detecting how water flows around obstacles. It's a sense that we humans lack entirely, and it's difficult for us to even imagine what it would be like to perceive the world this way. But for moray eels, it's as natural and essential as sight is for us. The muscular system of moray eels deserves mention as well. Their bodies are packed with powerful muscles arranged in segments, myomeres, that run the length of their body. These muscles work in coordinated waves to produce the undulating swimming motion characteristic of eels, but they're also capable of sudden explosive movements. When a moray strikes at prey, that strike is astonishingly fast, too fast for the human eye to fully perceive. The eel goes from motionless to striking in a fraction of a second, and by the time we register that it's moved, the prey is already caught in those jaws. This combination of sustained swimming ability and explosive striking power makes morays formidable predators. They can chase prey through the reef if necessary, following through twists and turns of the coral structure, or they can wait and ambush, exploding from concealment to grab prey before it has time to react. Different hunting strategies for different situations, all powered by that compact, efficient muscular system. As we move deeper into sleep, let these details settle into your subconscious. The slick mucus coating, the constant rhythmic breathing through the open mouth, the chemical universe of scents flowing through the water, detected by those specialized nostrils, the feeling of vibrations through the lateral line, painting a picture of nearby movement. This is how moray eels experience their world, through senses both familiar and utterly alien to us, adapted over millions of years to life in the shadowed passages of the reef. Now we come to what is perhaps the most fascinating and unique feature of moray eels, a feature so remarkable that when scientists first discovered and documented it, the findings were published in one of the world's most prestigious scientific journals. I'm talking about the pharyngeal jaws, the second set of jaws hidden deep in the moray's throat. To understand how revolutionary this adaptation is, we need to first understand how most fish feed. When a typical predatory fish sees prey, it opens its mouth rapidly, creating negative pressure, essentially a vacuum effect, that sucks the prey into the mouth along with a rush of water. Once in the mouth, the prey is manipulated by structures in the throat, including the pharyngeal jaws that most fish possess, and is gradually worked back toward the esophagus to be swallowed. This suction-based feeding is extremely common in fish. It's the ancestral feeding method, and it works well in open water. But moray eels have a problem. Their elongated, narrow body shape and their crevice-dwelling lifestyle mean they cannot generate effective suction. The modifications that made them excellent at navigating tight spaces also made traditional suction feeding inefficient. So how do morays, especially large species that feed on sizable prey, manage to swallow their food? For a long time, this was a mystery. Scientists knew morays were successful predators, but the mechanics of how they got large prey items from their jaws into their stomachs wasn't entirely clear. The answer was discovered relatively recently. Through the use of high-speed video and X-ray imaging, researchers filmed moray eels feeding and were astounded by what they saw. When a moray catches prey with its primary oral jaws, those are the jaws you can see when you look at the eel's mouth, something extraordinary happens. A second set of jaws, located in the throat, about where the back of the oral jaws end, launches forward at incredible speed. These pharyngeal jaws shoot into the mouth cavity. Their teeth grasp the prey that the oral jaws are holding, and then the pharyngeal jaws retract, pulling the prey backward into the throat and esophagus. It happens in a fraction of a second. The pharyngeal jaws travel forward a distance equal to several centimeters, depending on the species and size of the eel, grab the prey, and then retract. It's a ratcheting mechanism, similar to how snakes use their jaws to work prey into their mouths, except in moray eels. This happens internally, out of sight. X-ray imaging revealed that the pharyngeal jaws can protract so far forward that they reach a position level with the eel's eyes. The muscles that control this movement are elongated and extremely powerful, adapted specifically for this unique feeding mechanism. The teeth on the pharyngeal jaws are sharp and recurved, curving backward toward the throat. Once these teeth sink into prey, it's nearly impossible for the prey to escape. Any struggling or pulling only drives the teeth deeper and helps work the prey further back. The moray doesn't need to reposition its oral jaws, doesn't need to release and bite again. The pharyngeal jaws do all the work of transport, allowing the oral jaws to maintain their grip on prey throughout the process. This is the first and only known case of a vertebrate using pharyngeal jaws not just to process food, but to actively capture and transport it from the oral cavity to the esophagus. It's a major evolutionary innovation, one that freed morays from the constraints of suction feeding and allowed them to become successful predators in environments where suction is ineffective. The pharyngeal jaw system also explains some puzzling aspects of moray behavior. For instance, morays sometimes tie themselves into knots when dealing with large or struggling prey. They will loop their body, pass their head through the loop, and essentially use the loop as leverage, pulling against it to tear chunks from prey that's too large to swallow whole. This knot-tying behavior has been observed in multiple species and with different types of prey. It's a technique that works precisely because the moray's jaw mechanism doesn't rely on a wide gape or suction. The eel can maintain its bite while contorting its body in ways that would be impossible for most other fish. Not all morays have identical pharyngeal jaws. Just as the shape of the oral jaws and teeth vary between species according to diet, the pharyngeal jaws also show variation. Species that primarily eat hard-shelled prey like crabs and mollusks tend to have more robust pharyngeal jaws with blunt molar-like teeth suited for crushing. Species that feed mainly on fish and soft-bodied prey have sharper, more pointed pharyngeal teeth designed for gripping. These differences have evolved multiple times independently within the moray family, a beautiful example of convergent evolution where similar ecological pressures lead to similar solutions. The discovery of how moray pharyngeal jaws function also required scientists to revisit and revise earlier anatomical descriptions of moray throat structures. Initial studies had misidentified some of the muscles involved and underestimated the range of motion of the pharyngeal jaws. It took detailed dissection work, advanced imaging techniques, and careful comparative anatomy to fully understand this complex system. Even now, researchers are still investigating the finer details, how the muscles coordinate, how the pharyngeal jaws position themselves with such precision, how the sensory feedback system works to tell the eel when it has successfully grasped prey. One of the more intriguing recent discoveries is that at least some species of moray eels can feed on land, emerging from the water to capture prey on shore. This behavior was documented in snowflake moray eels, and it only works because of the pharyngeal jaw system. On land, suction is completely useless. There's no water to create the pressure differential, but the pharyngeal jaws don't rely on suction. As long as the eel can bite prey with its oral jaws, the pharyngeal jaws can do the rest, grasping and transporting food even in air. This suggests that the pharyngeal jaw system may give morays flexibility to exploit food resources in multiple environments. an advantage that could be increasingly important as climate change and other factors alter coastal ecosystems. The pharyngeal jaws also help explain the success of morays in the fossil record and their diversity today. By freeing themselves from the constraint of suction feeding, morays could exploit niches in the reef that other predatory fish could not access as efficiently. They could pursue prey into the tightest crevices, could feed in conditions where suction doesn't work well, and could handle a wider variety of prey types. This feeding innovation may be one of the key factors that allowed morays to diversify into over 200 species and spread across the world's oceans. As you continue to relax, imagine those hidden jaws lurking in the throat of every moray eel, ready to flash forward and back in an eye blink. It's a reminder that the ocean is full of innovations we're only beginning to understand, mechanisms and adaptations that evolution has crafted over immense timescales, solutions to problems that living creatures faced millions of years ago and still face today. The moray eel family is not a single type of creature, but a vast assemblage of different species, each with its own characteristics, its own ecological niche, its own story. Scientists currently recognize over 200 distinct species of moray eels distributed across approximately 16 genera. These species range from diminutive eels barely longer than a human hand to giants that rival or exceed the length of a tall person. They live in environments from the shallowest tide pools to depths of several hundred meters, from tropical coral reefs to temperate rocky reefs, and even, in a few unusual cases, in rivers and estuaries. Let's start with one of the most impressive species, the giant moray, scientifically known as Gymnothorax javanicus. This is the largest of all moray eels, and possibly one of the most formidable predators on coral reefs. An adult giant moray can reach lengths of 3 meters, about 10 feet, and can weigh upward of 30 kilograms, roughly 65 pounds. Their bodies are thick and muscular, mottled with dark brown and tan patterns that help them blend into the shadowy recesses of the reef. Giant morays are found throughout the Indo-Pacific region, from the Red Sea and East Africa, all the way to Hawaii and French Polynesia. They prefer areas with complex reef structure, lots of caves and overhangs where they can establish their territories. During the day, you might see just the head of a giant moray protruding from a hole, its small eyes watching the passing scene, its mouth opening and closing in that characteristic breathing motion. At night, these eels emerge to hunt, and few reef creatures are safe from them. Fish, octopuses, even other eels can fall prey to a hunting giant moray. Despite their imposing size and capabilities, giant morays are generally not aggressive toward humans unless provoked. Most attacks on divers occur when someone inadvertently places a hand into a crevice occupied by a moray, or when divers attempt to feed morays by hand, a practice that can lead to confusion about whether the hand or the food is the target. Unprovoked attacks are rare. The moray's gaping mouth and tooth-lined jaws make them look aggressive, but this is a misinterpretation of normal breathing behavior. Now let's consider a very different species, the green moray eel, Gymnothorax funebris. This is one of the largest moray species in the Atlantic and Caribbean, commonly reaching lengths of around 2 meters, though some individuals exceed that. As we mentioned earlier, green morays aren't actually green. Their skin is dark brown or gray, but they secrete a thick yellow mucus that gives them their distinctive greenish appearance. This mucus not only provides color camouflage among algae-covered rocks and seagrass beds, but also protects the eel from parasites and bacterial infections. Green morays are found along the western Atlantic coast, from New Jersey south through the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean, all the way to Brazil. They are particularly common in the Bahamas and the Florida Keys, where divers frequently encounter them. Like most morays, green morays are nocturnal hunters, spending their days tucked into crevices in the reef and emerging at night to search for food. Their diet includes fish, crustaceans like crabs and shrimp, and cephalopods, particularly octopuses. These eels have few natural predators once they reach adult size, though younger green morays must watch out for larger reef predators, including sharks, groupers, and barracudas. One notable threat to anyone who eats moray eels, whether human or another predator, is ciguatera poisoning. Morays can accumulate ciguatoxins in their flesh, particularly in their liver, from the fish and invertebrates they consume. In one documented case, 57 people in the northern Mariana Islands became ill after eating just the head and a portion of a large moray. The toxins cause neurological, gastrointestinal, and cardiovascular symptoms that can persist for days or even longer. This is one reason why morays are not commercially fished in most areas. They're simply not safe to eat, even if properly cooked. At the opposite end of the size spectrum, let's talk about some of the smaller moray species. The snowflake moray, Echidna nebulosa, is a relatively small species, rarely exceeding a meter in length and often much smaller. These eels are beautifully patterned with dark bands and white or yellow spots that resemble snowflakes, hence the name. Snowflake morays are found across the Indo-Pacific, from the Red Sea to Hawaii, usually in shallow reef environments. What makes snowflake morays particularly interesting is their diet and dentition. Unlike the sharp-toothed piscivorous morays, snowflakes have blunt, molar-like teeth adapted for crushing hard-shelled prey. They specialize in eating crustaceans, particularly crabs, and their powerful jaws can crack through shells with ease. This specialization is reflected not just in their teeth, but in the shape of their skull and the attachment points of their jaw muscles, which are configured to maximize crushing force. Snowflake morays are also among the most active and visible of moray species. Unlike many of their relatives who spend most of their time hidden in crevices, snowflakes are often seen swimming openly across reef flats, especially at night, actively searching for prey. This behavior makes them popular subjects for underwater photographers and a favorite among divers. Then there's the ribbon eel, Rhinamurinaina quaesita. One of the most visually striking of all morays, ribbon eels are long and slender, with an almost delicate appearance compared to the thick-bodied giant morays. They have distinctive elongated nostrils that project forward from their snout like questing antennae. Young ribbon eels are jet black, juveniles transition to a vivid electric blue with a yellow dorsal fin, and adults eventually become entirely yellow as they mature. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Ribbon eels are protandric hermaphrodites. All ribbon eels are born male, but as they age and grow, some individuals transition to become female. This sex change is accompanied by the final color transformation to yellow. Ribbon eels live in sandy areas near reefs where they construct burrows in the substrate. They spend much of their time with their bodies buried and just their heads protruding from the sand, swaying gently with the current. They feed primarily on small fish, which they capture with quick strikes from their hidden position. Watching a ribbon eel hunt is like watching a beautiful, deadly piece of living art, that blue and yellow coloration swaying hypnotically, then suddenly lunging forward to snatch passing prey. There are moray species adapted to almost every marine environment. The Mediterranean moray, Moraeina helena, is one of the few temperate morays, found in the Mediterranean Sea and along the Atlantic coast of Europe and North Africa. This species was well known to ancient peoples. The Romans even kept them in special ponds for food, though as we've discussed, eating morays carries significant risks. The zebra moray, Gymnomoraena zebra, is another hard prey specialist with blunt teeth, beautifully marked with alternating dark and light bands. The honeycomb moray, Gymnothorax favaginus, is a large Indo-Pacific species with an intricate pattern of dark spots creating a honeycomb or leopard-like appearance. The dragon moray, Enchelicor pardalis, is a rare and sought-after species in the aquarium trade, with high fins, an ornate pattern, and distinctive nostrils that give it an almost mythical appearance. Some moray species exhibit fascinating geographic variation. A species found across a wide range may have slightly different coloration or pattern in different parts of its range, adaptations to local conditions that hint at ongoing evolutionary processes. Scientists use these variations, along with genetic analysis, to understand how moray species are related to each other and how they spread across the oceans. The diversity of morays also includes variation in behavior and ecology. Some species are generalist predators, taking whatever prey is available. Others are specialists, focusing on particular types of food. Some are solitary and highly territorial, while others are somewhat tolerant of conspecifics. Some hunt actively, moving through the reef in search of prey. Others are purely ambush predators, waiting motionless for prey to come within striking distance. This incredible diversity, over 200 species each slightly different from the others, is a testament to the evolutionary success of the moray body plan and feeding mechanism. They have radiated into virtually every available niche in reef ecosystems and beyond, and they continue to thrive in oceans across the world. As climate change and human activities reshape marine environments, morays show a degree of resilience, particularly in areas where larger predators like sharks have been overfished. In some Caribbean reefs, moray populations have actually increased where shark populations have declined, possibly because they face reduced competition and predation. Let your mind wander through this incredible array of species. Imagine the riot of patterns and colors, the variety of sizes and shapes, all variations on the same elegant theme of the serpentine reef predator. Each species is a masterpiece of evolution, refined over countless generations to succeed in its particular slice of the ocean. To understand moray eels, we must understand where and how they live, the specific environmental requirements that shape their daily existence. Moray eels are, fundamentally, creatures of structure. They need complexity in their environment, cracks and crevices, caves and overhangs, spaces where their elongated bodies can hide and from which they can hunt. This is why the association between morays and coral reefs is so strong. Coral reefs provide exactly this type of habitat in abundance. A healthy coral reef is not a solid wall, but a three-dimensional labyrinth. Coral colonies of different species grow on top of each other and alongside each other, creating a matrix of living rock riddled with holes and passages. As older corals die, their skeletons remain, providing substrate for new growth, but also creating cavities and tunnels. Storm damage, predation by boring organisms, and the natural growth patterns of corals all contribute to the structural complexity that makes reefs ideal moray habitat. Each adult moray typically establishes a territory centered on a particular crevice or cave that becomes its home base. This is not just a random hole in the reef. Morays are selective about their retreats. A good moray den needs to be the right size, large enough for the eel to fit comfortably, but not so large that the eel cannot defend it. It should have good concealment, with the entrance hidden or positioned so that the moray can watch for both approaching prey and potential threats. Multiple entrances can be advantageous, providing escape routes if needed, though some morays prefer dens with just one entrance that they can guard effectively. During daylight hours, this is where you'll find the eel. If you're lucky enough to be diving or snorkeling near a moray's territory, you might see its head protruding from a hole, often with just the eyes and snout visible. The eel is resting, but it's not sleeping in the way we understand sleep. It's in a state of low activity, conserving energy, but still alert to what's happening around it. That constant opening and closing of the mouth continues. The eel must breathe, and occasionally you might see the head withdraw deeper into the crevice or reposition slightly. This daytime resting behavior serves several purposes. First, it keeps the eel safe from visual predators during the hours when light penetrates the water and visibility is good. Large groupers, sharks, and other predators hunt during the day, and while an adult moray is a formidable opponent, discretion is often the better part of valor. Second, the eel is conserving energy for the night's hunting. Third, the eel is still in a position to take advantage of opportunistic feeding. If a small fish unwisely swims too close to that hole, the moray can strike in an instant, securing a meal without the energy expenditure of active hunting. The relationship between a moray and its den can last for years. These eels are not nomadic. They establish a territory and remain there as long as the habitat provides adequate food and shelter. This site fidelity means that divers visiting the same reef regularly can often find the same individual moray in the same crevice time after time. Some morays become well known to dive operators and even acquire names from the humans who regularly observe them. However, morays are not permanently fixed to one location. If conditions deteriorate, if food becomes scarce, if a larger, more aggressive moray displaces them, or if the physical structure of their den is damaged by storms or other disturbances, a moray will relocate. Finding a new territory can be risky. The eel must move through areas that might be claimed by other morays, and must locate suitable shelter before it becomes vulnerable to predators during daylight. The spacing of moray territories on a reef is determined by several factors. Food availability is paramount. A stretch of reef with abundant prey can support a higher density of morays than an area where food is scarce. The physical structure matters too. More complex reef with more potential den sites can accommodate more individual eels. And there's a social component. Morays are generally intolerant of others of their species nearby. While they're not as aggressively territorial as some fish species, They maintain spacing through various mechanisms, possibly including chemical signals, and certainly including direct aggression if another moray attempts to take over a den. Interestingly, recent research has shown that moray populations can actually increase in areas where human fishing pressure has reduced populations of other large predators. On Caribbean reefs near human population centers, where sharks and large groupers have been heavily fished, morays appear to be more common and more visible than on remote reefs where those predators are still abundant. This suggests that morays face competition and predation from these other species, and when those pressures are removed, moray populations can expand. It's a complicated ecological story, one that reminds us how interconnected reef species are and how human activities can have cascading effects through food webs. At night, the reef transforms. As darkness falls and light levels drop, many diurnal fish seek shelter and become inactive. But for morays, night is when the work begins. The eel slowly emerges from its crevice, its body undulating in that characteristic serpentine motion as it begins to hunt. Movement patterns vary by species and individual. Some morays are active, wandering hunters that cover significant distances across the reef, investigating every hole and crevice for prey. Others are more sedentary, moving only a short distance from their den and relying primarily on ambush tactics. The nocturnal reef is a different place. Sounds take on greater importance when vision is limited, and chemical cues become paramount. Morays navigate this nighttime world using their acute sense of smell and their lateral line sensitivity to water movements. They can detect the faint chemical trail of a fish that passed by minutes earlier, and they can feel the subtle pressure waves created by a sleeping fish's respiratory movements. They move slowly and deliberately, conserving energy until they detect something worth investigating more closely. When hunting, morays often use a strategy of investigation and patience. They'll approach a likely spot, a cluster of coral branches, a rocky outcrop with multiple holes, a patch of rubble. They'll pause, sampling the water, feeling for vibrations. If they detect prey, they don't immediately rush forward. Instead, they slowly position themselves, sometimes waiting for long minutes, until the prey makes a move that brings it within striking range. Then comes the strike, explosive and impossibly fast, and if successful, the prey is seized in those jaws and the pharyngeal jaws do their work, pulling the meal backward to be swallowed. Not all hunting expeditions are successful. Prey animals on reefs have evolved their own strategies for avoiding predators. Many fish are cryptic in coloration and remain motionless at night, making them difficult to detect. Octopuses, a favored prey of many morays, are intelligent and capable of complex evasive behaviors, including squeezing into spaces almost impossibly small, changing color and texture to blend with their surroundings, or jetting away in bursts of speed while releasing obscuring ink. But morays are persistent, and they have advantages in patience and sensory capabilities. Over the course of a night, a hunting moray may make several kills, or it may return to its den empty-mouthed. The balance between energy expended and energy gained is what determines survival and reproductive success. As dawn approaches and the first light begins to filter through the water, morays return to their dens. By the time the sun is fully up and the reef is bathed in bright tropical light, most morays have retreated to their crevices, where they'll spend another day resting, breathing, and waiting for darkness to return. The hunting strategies of moray eels are as diverse as the species themselves, but certain themes and techniques appear again and again across the family. Understanding how morays hunt gives us insight into their role in reef ecosystems and into the evolutionary pressures that have shaped their remarkable adaptations. Let's start with the ambush predators, morays that rely primarily on stealth and surprise rather than pursuit. These eels select a position where prey is likely to pass, often at the entrance to their own den or in another strategic location with good concealment. They remain nearly motionless, sometimes for hours, with only the faintest movement, the breathing motion of the mouth and the subtle adjustment of position to keep prey in range. The key to successful ambush hunting is remaining undetected until the critical moment. Moray eels have two major advantages here. First, their coloration and pattern usually provide excellent camouflage against the coral or rocky substrate they inhabit. A mottled brown and tan moray pressed against coral rock can be almost invisible, especially in the dappled light environment of the reef. Second, their lack of movement eliminates one of the primary cues that prey animals use to detect predators. Many reef fish have excellent vision for detecting motion, but a perfectly still moray, even one in plain view, might not register as a threat until it's too late. When prey comes within range, the strike is devastating. Morays are capable of accelerating from 0 to striking speed in a tiny fraction of a second. High-speed video analysis has shown that moray strikes can be completed in under 100 milliseconds, faster than a human eye can follow. The eel lunges forward, mouth opening wide, and the jaws snap shut on the prey with tremendous force. The backward curving teeth ensure that once the prey is bitten, escape is extremely difficult. Even if the initial bite doesn't immediately immobilize the prey, the pharyngeal jaws shoot forward, grasp, and begin pulling the prey deeper into the throat, while the oral jaws maintain their grip. For prey items that are small relative to the maray's size, the entire capture and swallowing process might take only a few seconds. Larger prey requires more work. This is where we see some of the more dramatic hunting behaviors. If prey is too large to swallow in one piece, the moray may use its body knotting technique. The eel loops its body, passes its head through the loop, and then uses the loop as leverage against the prey, pulling and tearing to separate manageable chunks. This behavior looks bizarre and almost serpent-like, but it's an effective solution to the problem of eating large prey when you lack hands or limbs to hold and manipulate food. Now let's consider the active hunters, morays that search for prey rather than waiting for it to come to them. These eels, often from species that are somewhat less common but no less fascinating, leave their dens and swim through the reef, investigating potential hiding spots of prey. They poke their heads into holes, slide through narrow passages, and generally cover a lot of territory in search of a meal. Active hunting requires more energy expenditure than ambush hunting, but it can be more productive in certain situations, particularly in reefs where prey is patchily distributed. An actively hunting moray uses its sense of smell and lateral line as it moves, constantly gathering information about its surroundings. When it detects chemical or pressure cues suggesting prey nearby, it investigates more thoroughly, perhaps slowing down and adopting ambush-like patience once it has localized the source of the signal. One remarkable aspect of moray hunting is their ability to pursue prey into refuges that would be inaccessible to most other predators. A fish fleeing a grouper or a shark can often escape by darting into a small hole in the reef, but a fish fleeing a moray has no such luxury. The moray can follow into that hole, its flexible body and lack of protruding fins allowing it to navigate spaces that a more conventionally shaped fish cannot enter. This ability to exploit three-dimensional habitat complexity is one of the keys to moray success as reef predators. Diet varies considerably among moray species, and is strongly reflected in their morphology. Species with long, narrow jaws and sharp, needle-like teeth tend to specialize in eating fish. These piscivorous morays strike with precision and speed, their teeth designed to grip slippery, muscular prey that will struggle vigorously. Many of these species hunt fish that seek shelter in crevices at night, using their superior ability to navigate tight spaces to corner prey that has no escape route. Species with shorter, more robust jaws and blunt or molar-like teeth are durophagus, specialized for eating hard-shelled prey. These morays target crustaceans, mollusks, and other invertebrates with protective armor. Their powerful jaws can crush through shells that would protect these animals from most predators. When a durophagus moray bites down on a crab, you can sometimes hear the cracking of the shell even underwater. These eels play an important role in controlling populations of reef invertebrates and recycling nutrients through the food web. Some morays are dietary generalists, taking a wide variety of prey depending on availability. These species might eat fish one night, crabs another night, and an octopus or squid on yet another occasion. This flexibility can be advantageous in changing conditions, allowing the eel to switch prey types if one becomes scarce. Octopuses deserve special mention as moray prey, because the predator-prey relationship between morays and octopuses is particularly complex and fascinating. Octopuses are highly intelligent, remarkably flexible, and capable of sophisticated defensive behaviors. They can change color and texture instantly to match their surroundings, making them difficult to see. They can squeeze through openings barely larger than their beak, which is the only hard part of their body, and when threatened, they can jet away rapidly or release ink to confuse predators. But morays have evolved to hunt octopuses effectively despite these defenses. The eel's keen sense of smell can detect an octopus even when it's perfectly camouflaged. The moray's ability to pursue prey into tight crevices means the octopus's escape routes are limited, and if an octopus attempts to wrap its arms around the moray in defense, the eel can sometimes tie itself into a knot and pull through the knot, effectively slipping out of the octopus's grasp while maintaining its own grip on the prey. The interaction between a moray and an octopus is like a chess match, each animal trying to outwit and outmaneuver the other. Sometimes the octopus escapes, slipping away into a hole too small even for the moray, or jetting across open water to a distant refuge. Other times, the moray's persistence and specialized hunting adaptations win out, and the octopus becomes a meal. It's a dynamic that has played out on reefs for millions of years, each species evolving in response to the other's capabilities. Hunting success rates for morays are not precisely known for most species. Studying wild eels and tracking their hunting success over extended periods is extremely challenging. But based on observations and energy balance considerations, it seems likely that moray eels, like most predators, experience many more hunting failures than successes. A moray might investigate dozens of potential prey opportunities in a night and make successful kills only a few times. But eels can survive on relatively infrequent meals. Their metabolic rates are not as high as more active predators, and they can go days between feedings if necessary. As you relax and let these images flow through your mind, imagine the patient stillness of the waiting moray, the explosive violence of the strike, the intricate dance between predator and prey that has been refined over evolutionary time. These are not mindless monsters, but sophisticated hunters, each with strategies and capabilities honed by natural selection to succeed in one of the most competitive environments on Earth. One of the most fascinating aspects of moray eel biology is their capacity to form relationships with other species, relationships that benefit both partners. In the competitive and often harsh environment of the coral reef, cooperation between species is relatively rare, but where it occurs, it can dramatically improve survival and success for those involved. Morays participate in several such relationships, and each tells a story about the complexity and interconnectedness of reef ecosystems. Let's begin with perhaps the most famous of these partnerships, the cooperative hunting relationship between moray eels and coral groupers. This behavior has been documented in multiple locations, most notably in the Red Sea and Indo-Pacific reefs, and it represents one of the clearest examples of interspecific cooperation in fish. Here's how it works. A grouper, typically a species like the coral grouper or roving coral grouper, encounters a moray eel on the reef. If the grouper is interested in hunting, it approaches the moray and performs a specific signal, rapidly shaking its head back and forth in an exaggerated motion. This head-shaking display is not a threat or a random behavior, it's a deliberate communication. The moray, if receptive to the invitation, responds by emerging from its crevice and beginning to hunt alongside the grouper. The two fish then move through the reef together, sometimes for extended periods. They hunt as a coordinated team, though they don't communicate constantly. Instead, they seem to have an innate understanding of each other's capabilities and how to exploit them. When they locate prey, the advantage of their partnership becomes clear. Many reef fish, when threatened by a predator, will flee into the reef structure, darting into holes and crevices, where a large fish like a grouper cannot follow. This escape strategy is effective against most predators, but not when a moray is part of the hunting team. The moray can follow into those tight spaces, its flexible body allowing it to navigate passages that the grouper cannot enter. Once inside the reef structure, the moray pursues the prey, flushing it back out into open water where the grouper is waiting. The prey has no good options: hide in the reef and face the moray, or flee to open water and face the grouper. Either way, one of the hunters is likely to make a successful kill. What's remarkable about this behavior is that it's clearly intentional and requires a degree of understanding and coordination that we don't typically associate with fish. The grouper must recognize the moray as a potential hunting partner, not prey or a competitor. It must perform the invitation signal and wait for a response. The moray must understand the signal and choose to participate. And once hunting together, both fish must adjust their behavior based on what the other is doing, complementing rather than interfering with each other's hunting strategies. This cooperative hunting benefits both species. Studies have shown that both groupers and morays make more successful kills when hunting together than when hunting alone. The benefit is mutual. This is true mutualism in the ecological sense, not a case of one species exploiting another. How this behavior evolved is still debated, but one hypothesis is that early encounters were accidental. A grouper hunting near a moray might have incidentally benefited when the moray's presence drove prey toward the grouper. Over time, both species learned to recognize the benefit and began to actively seek out these partnerships, eventually developing the ritualized head-shaking signal to initiate cooperation. The cognitive implications of this behavior are fascinating. It suggests that morays and groupers are capable of recognizing other species as individuals with useful capabilities, of making decisions about whether to cooperate, and of adjusting their behavior in response to a partner's actions. This requires a level of cognitive flexibility and social awareness that exceeds what we see in most fish species. It's a reminder that intelligence in the ocean takes many forms, and that even animals with brains very different from ours can engage in surprisingly sophisticated behaviors. Now let's turn to another moray partnership, one that's more obviously mutualistic, and perhaps even more visually striking: the relationship between moray eels and cleaner shrimp. If you've been diving on coral reefs, you've likely seen cleaning stations, areas where certain small fish or shrimp offer cleaning services to larger fish. These cleaning stations are fascinating examples of mutualism. The cleaner organisms get food in the form of parasites, dead skin, and mucus, while the client fish get rid of harmful parasites and damaged tissue. Moray eels regularly visit cleaning stations, and their interactions with cleaner shrimp are a sight to behold. Cleaner shrimp, typically species from genera like Lismata or Urocorydella, are small crustaceans with long antennae and delicate claws. They establish territories at specific locations on the reef, often around a particular coral head or rocky outcrop, and they advertise their presence through movement and possibly chemical signals. When a moray approaches a cleaning station, it adopts a specific posture. It becomes still, often positioning itself with its head accessible to the shrimp. Sometimes it will gape its mouth open wide, even wider than during normal breathing, clearly inviting the shrimp to clean inside. This is an act of remarkable trust. The moray is a predator quite capable of eating the shrimp in a single gulp, and yet it allows these tiny crustaceans to crawl all over its body, including into its mouth, one of the most vulnerable and sensitive areas. The shrimp respond to this invitation. They climb onto the moray's body and begin their work. They pick at the eel's skin with their claws, removing parasites, dead scales, and bits of mucus. They pay particular attention to areas that the eel cannot easily clean itself, around the eyes, the gill openings, and especially inside the mouth. Watching cleaner shrimp work inside a moray's mouth is almost surreal. The eel sits motionless, jaws agape, while tiny shrimp walk across its tongue and pick parasites from between its teeth. Occasionally, the moray might jolt or shudder, possibly in response to the shrimp cleaning a particularly sensitive spot, but it doesn't close its mouth or harm the cleaners. This cleaning interaction can last from several seconds to a few minutes, depending on how many parasites the moray is carrying and how thorough a cleaning it needs. When the shrimp have finished, or when the moray decides it's had enough, the eel slowly closes its mouth and moves away, and the shrimp return to their station to wait for the next client. What makes this interaction even more interesting is that it can occur at night. Most cleaning relationships in the ocean are visually mediated. They happen during the day when both parties can see each other clearly. But morays are largely nocturnal, and yet they still seek out cleaner shrimp after dark. Researchers have documented nocturnal cleaning interactions between giant morays and cleaner shrimp, interactions that must be initiated and maintained primarily through tactile and possibly chemical cues rather than visual signals. The shrimp touch the eel with their long antennae, and the eel responds by adopting the cleaning posture. This suggests a more sophisticated communication system than simple visual recognition. Like the grouper moray hunting partnership, the moray-shrimp cleaning relationship is mutually beneficial. The shrimp get a reliable source of food, and they're protected from their own predators while servicing a client. Few fish would dare attack a shrimp that's in the mouth of a moray eel. The moray gets rid of parasites that could otherwise cause irritation, infection, and reduced health. Parasites are a significant problem for reef fish. They can damage skin and gills, spread disease, and drain energy. Regular cleaning by shrimp helps keep morays healthy, potentially improving their growth, survival, and reproductive success. There's an unspoken agreement in these cleaning interactions. The moray could easily eat the shrimp, and occasionally, in cases of mistaken identity or when a moray is particularly hungry, it might. But such cheating is rare because both parties benefit more from maintaining the relationship. Over evolutionary time, both morays and cleaner shrimp have been selected to honor this agreement because individuals that cheat, morays that eat their cleaners, or shrimp that damage their clients, lose access to the benefits of the mutualism. These partnerships, both the grouper moray hunting cooperation and the moray shrimp cleaning relationship, illustrate a fundamental principle of ecology. In complex environments like coral reefs, cooperation can be as important as competition. Species that can form beneficial relationships with others gain advantages in the struggle to survive and reproduce. The moray eels that we see today, successful and widespread across the world's reefs, are successful in part because they've learned to cooperate as well as compete. As you continue to drift deeper into relaxation, imagine these unlikely partnerships: the sleek grouper and the serpentine moray, moving through the reef in coordinated pursuit. The tiny shrimp, fearlessly entering the mouth of a predator that could end its life in an instant, trusting in an ancient agreement written in behavior and evolution. These are some of the countless small miracles that occur every day in the ocean, interactions that we're only beginning to understand and appreciate. Despite decades of research and countless hours of observation, the reproductive biology of moray eels remains one of the least understood aspects of their lives. Unlike many reef fish whose spawning behavior can be readily observed, morays typically reproduce under conditions that make direct observation extremely difficult. At night, often in deeper water or in locations far from where they normally reside, and their courtship and mating behaviors remain largely unknown. What we do know comes from scattered observations, examination of captured specimens, and study of their larvae. Let's piece together the story, incomplete as it is, of how moray eels reproduce and how their young develop into adults. Most, if not all, moray species are oviparous, meaning they lay eggs rather than giving birth to live young. The exact timing of reproduction varies by species and location, influenced by environmental factors like water temperature, day length, and food availability. In tropical areas where temperatures are relatively constant year-round, some species may reproduce opportunistically whenever conditions are favorable. In temperate or subtropical regions, reproduction is more seasonal, typically occurring during warmer months. The courtship behavior of morays, to the extent that it has been observed, appears to involve chemical communication. Females ready to spawn likely release pheromones into the water that attract males. Given moray eels' excellent sense of smell, this would be an effective way to coordinate reproduction. Males may be able to detect these chemical signals from considerable distances and home in on receptive females. Spawning itself involves the simultaneous release of eggs and sperm into the water column, a process called broadcast spawning. The female releases hundreds of thousands or even millions of tiny eggs, and one or more males release sperm to fertilize them externally. This happens in open water above the reef, where current can carry the eggs away from the reef structure and disperse them widely. Why spawn away from the reef? Partly to reduce predation. The reef is full of planktivorous fish that would eagerly devour eel eggs. Partly to take advantage of currents for dispersal, which we'll discuss shortly. After spawning, the adult eels provide no parental care. The eggs are on their own, drifting with the currents. This might seem harsh, abandoning offspring to the whims of the ocean, but it's a common strategy among reef fish, and it works because the sheer number of eggs means that even if most perish, enough will survive to maintain the population. Fertilized moray eel eggs develop quickly, hatching within a day or two into larvae. But these are not miniature versions of adult eels. Moray larvae are leptocephali, a word derived from Greek meaning thin head. Leptocephali's larvae are bizarre creatures, completely unlike the adults they will become. They're transparent, flat, and ribbon-like, with tiny heads and large fang-like teeth that seem disproportionate to their size. If you saw one without knowing what it was, you might not recognize it as a fish at all, much less as a future moray eel. The leptocephalous stage is a prolonged one, and this is key to understanding moray eel biogeography and distribution. These larvae remain in the pelagic zone, the open water layers of the ocean, for extended periods. The duration varies by species, but can range from a few months to a full year or even longer. During this time, they drift with ocean currents, feeding on microscopic plankton and growing slowly. This long pelagic larval duration has profound implications. Larvae that hatch on one reef can be carried by currents to settle on a reef hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. This long-distance dispersal capability explains how moray species can have such wide geographic ranges, spanning entire ocean basins. It's how morays colonized remote islands like Hawaii, which are thousands of miles from the nearest continental landmass. Larval drifting in the North Equatorial Current can make that journey, though the odds for any individual larva are minuscule. The long larval stage also means that moray eel populations on different reefs are genetically connected. Eels spawned in the Caribbean can have their larvae settle in the Gulf of Mexico or along the coast of Florida. This genetic mixing prevents populations from diverging too much and maintains species cohesion across vast distances. Eventually, if they survive the myriad dangers of the open ocean, the larvae undergo metamorphosis. This transformation is dramatic and rapid. The leptocephalus larva stops feeding, its body shrinks as it metabolizes stored energy, and it begins to transform into a juvenile eel. The body becomes more rounded and opaque, developing the pigmentation and form characteristic of the adult stage. The proportions change dramatically, the head grows relative to the body, and the larval teeth are replaced with the adult dentition. Metamorphosis is triggered by a combination of factors that aren't entirely understood, but likely include age, size, and perhaps chemical cues that indicate suitable settlement habitat is nearby. Transformed juveniles then seek out appropriate habitat, typically shallow reef areas or rocky shorelines where they can find shelter and food. Young morays face intense predation pressure. They're vulnerable to a wide range of predators, so finding good hiding spots is critical for survival. Juveniles grow relatively slowly, taking several years to reach sexual maturity depending on the species. During this time, they're learning the skills they'll need as adults: how to hunt effectively, how to navigate the reef, which areas are good hunting grounds, and which should be avoided. Growth rates depend on food availability and environmental conditions. Well-fed morays in productive habitats grow faster than those in marginal environments. Once a moray reaches sexual maturity, which might occur at 3 to 5 years of age for smaller species, or 8 to 10 years for larger species, it can begin to participate in reproduction, continuing the cycle. How many years a moray can live is not well documented for most species, but they're likely relatively long-lived. Some estimates suggest lifespans of 10 to 30 years or more, possibly longer for the largest species. There are still enormous gaps in our understanding of moray reproduction. For most species, we've never observed courtship or spawning in the wild. We don't know if there's size-based dominance in mating, whether females choose particular males, or whether morays return to specific spawning sites year after year. We don't know the full range of environmental cues that trigger spawning, or exactly how larvae find suitable settlement habitat from the open ocean. Some fascinating possibilities remain unexplored. For instance, research on other eels has revealed that some species are hermaphroditic, capable of changing sex during their lifetime, or possessing both male and female reproductive organs. We mentioned earlier that ribbon eels are protandric hermaphrodites, all starting as males and some changing to female. Might other moray species have similar capabilities? Hermaphroditism can be advantageous for solitary animals that encounter potential mates infrequently. It ensures that any two adults who meet can potentially reproduce. Breeding morays in captivity has proven extremely difficult, which is why we know so little about their early life history. The long pelagic larval stage means that raising morays from eggs to juveniles requires maintaining appropriate plankton food sources for months, controlling water quality, and dealing with the delicate nature of leptocephalus larvae. Very few aquariums or research facilities have successfully bred morays through their full life cycle. As we drift through these mysteries, imagine the countless moray larvae drifting in the ocean's currents at this very moment, transparent ribbons of potential, each one a tiny link in a chain of life stretching back millions of years. Most will not survive, consumed by plankton-feeding fish, carried into unsuitable waters, or failing to find habitat when the time comes to settle. But some will make it, transform, and begin their lives as reef-dwelling predators, and the cycle will continue as it has for eons. Throughout human history, moray eels have occupied a particular place in our collective imagination. Their serpentine form, gaping mouths full of sharp teeth, and habit of lurking in dark crevices have given them a fearsome reputation, one that's only partially deserved. Understanding the reality of human-moray interactions requires separating myth from fact, fear from actual danger. First, let's address the question on many people's minds. Are moray eels dangerous? The short answer is they can be, but attacks on humans are rare and almost always occur in specific circumstances that could have been avoided. Morays are not aggressive animals in the sense of actively seeking out humans to attack. They have no interest in us as prey. We're far too large and the wrong shape. But morays are territorial animals that will defend their dens if they feel threatened, and they have powerful jaws and sharp teeth capable of inflicting serious injuries. Most moray bites occur when divers or snorkelers inadvertently place their hands into crevices occupied by an eel. Imagine the scenario from the moray's perspective. It's resting in its den, and suddenly a large object, your hand, comes probing into its space. The eel perceives this as a threat and responds defensively, biting whatever has invaded its territory. The bite is not predatory, it's defensive, but that distinction doesn't make it any less painful or dangerous for the person bitten. A moray bite has several characteristics that make it particularly traumatic. The teeth are numerous, sharp and curved backward. When a moray bites, the teeth penetrate deeply and hook into tissue, making it very difficult to pull away. In fact, attempting to forcefully pull away from a moray bite often causes more tissue damage than the initial bite itself. The backward curved teeth act like barbs, tearing flesh as you pull against them. Moreover, the moray's jaw mechanism makes it difficult for the eel to release its grip voluntarily. There are documented cases of divers bitten by morays where the eel could not or would not let go even after several minutes, and the only solution was to kill the eel and manually pry its jaws open. This is a traumatic experience for both the human and the eel, and it's completely avoidable with proper diving etiquette. The key to avoiding moray bites is simple. Don't put your hands or any other body parts into holes or crevices in the reef without first checking carefully what's inside. Many divers use a light to illuminate crevices before reaching in. Better yet, simply don't reach into reef crevices at all. If you're hunting for lobster or looking for that perfect photo, be aware that the space you're investigating might be a moray's home and respect that. Another situation that can lead to bites is hand-feeding morays, a practice that some dive operators and aquarium staff engage in. While morays can become accustomed to being fed by humans, this doesn't make them tame or safe. Morays have poor vision and rely heavily on smell to locate food. When you offer food by hand, the eel is following the scent of the food, and it may not distinguish clearly between the food and the hand holding it. Accidental bites during hand feeding are not uncommon, and they can be severe. If someone is bitten by a moray, immediate medical attention is essential. Moray bites often become infected because the eel's mouth harbors various bacteria, and the puncture wounds created by the teeth are difficult to clean thoroughly. Infection can lead to serious complications if not treated promptly with antibiotics. Additionally, there's always concern about potential nerve or tendon damage, particularly if the bite is on a hand or foot. Beyond the physical danger of bites, there's another human health concern related to morays: ciguatera poisoning. We mentioned this earlier, but it's worth expanding on because it's a real and serious risk for anyone who attempts to eat moray eel, even in areas where eel meat is traditionally consumed. Ciguatera is caused by toxins produced by certain microscopic dinoflagellates, single-celled organisms that live on or near coral reefs. These toxins accumulate in herbivorous fish that graze on algae where the dinoflagellates reside. When predatory fish eat these herbivores, the toxins accumulate in their tissues, and this bioaccumulation continues up the food chain. Apex predators like morays, which eat other predatory fish and invertebrates, can accumulate very high levels of ciguatoxins. The toxins are heat stable, meaning cooking does not destroy them. So even thoroughly cooked moray meat can cause ciguatera poisoning. Symptoms include neurological effects, like tingling and numbness, gastrointestinal distress, and in severe cases, cardiovascular problems. The neurological symptoms can be particularly bizarre. One classic symptom is reversal of hot and cold sensation, where ice feels burning hot and hot objects feel cold. These symptoms can persist for days, weeks, or even months. In the documented case we mentioned earlier, 57 people were poisoned after eating portions of a single large moray. This incident highlights the danger. You can't tell by looking at or tasting the meat whether it contains ciguatoxins, and there's no safe level of consumption. This is one reason why morays are not commercially fished in most areas. The risk is simply too high. In regions where moray consumption has traditional or cultural significance, people have learned to avoid the largest individuals, which tend to have the highest toxin levels, and to avoid eating the liver, where toxins are most concentrated. But even these precautions don't eliminate the risk entirely. On a more positive note, many divers and snorkelers have had wonderful, safe encounters with moray eels. Watching a moray hunt at night, observing one being cleaned by shrimp, or simply seeing an eel's head protruding from a crevice, watching you watch it, can be highlights of a dive trip. Morays are curious animals, and some individuals become quite tolerant of respectful human presence, particularly in areas where divers are common. In aquarium settings, morays can thrive if provided with appropriate habitat and care. They need large tanks with plenty of hiding places, stable water quality, and a diet of appropriate foods. Some species adapt well to captivity and can become quite responsive to their keepers, learning to recognize the person who feeds them and even tolerating gentle interaction. However, keeping morays is not for inexperienced aquarists. They require specialized care. They can be aggressive toward tank mates, and there's always the risk of bites during tank maintenance. The key to positive human-moray interactions, whether in the wild or in captivity, is respect and understanding. Morays are wild animals with natural behaviors and needs. They're not malicious or evil, despite their fearsome appearance. They're simply predators doing what evolution has shaped them to do, living in the reef shadows, hunting when hungry, defending their homes when threatened. If we approach them with knowledge and respect, maintaining appropriate distance and avoiding threatening behaviors, we can observe and appreciate them safely, and they enrich our experience of the ocean's incredible diversity. Moray eels are not just interesting creatures in their own right. They play crucial roles in the complex ecosystems of coral reefs and other marine habitats. Understanding their ecological importance helps us appreciate why conservation of these animals and their habitats matters, not just for the eels themselves, but for the health of entire marine communities. Let's start by considering morays as apex predators. In many reef systems, particularly in areas where larger predators like sharks have been reduced by fishing, morays occupy the top tier of the food web. As apex predators, they help regulate populations of prey species, primarily fish, crustaceans, and cephalopods. This top-down regulation is essential for maintaining balanced ecosystems. Consider what happens to a reef system when top predators are removed or greatly reduced. Without predation pressure, prey populations can explode, and these unchecked populations can then have cascading effects on the rest of the ecosystem. For instance, an overabundance of herbivorous fish can lead to overgrazing of algae, which sounds like it might be good for corals. But actually, some algae presence is important for nutrient cycling and habitat structure. Or conversely, if predation on herbivores decreases, algae can overgrow and smother corals. Morays help prevent these imbalances by exerting consistent predation pressure on their prey species. They selectively remove individuals from prey populations, and often the individuals they remove are the weak, sick, or unwary, the ones that make mistakes like venturing too far from shelter or moving through the reef without adequate vigilance. This selective predation can improve the overall health and fitness of prey populations, a counterintuitive but well-documented phenomenon in ecology. Interesting recent research has shown that moray populations are actually higher on reefs close to human population centers in the Caribbean, places where fishing pressure has significantly reduced populations of sharks and large groupers. This suggests that morays face competition and predation from these other apex predators, and when those pressures are released, moray populations expand. In a sense, morays are stepping into an ecological role that was previously filled by now depleted species. This population increase of morays near humans should not necessarily be seen as entirely positive. While it's interesting that morays can be resilient to fishing pressure that affects other species, their increased abundance is a symptom of a disrupted ecosystem, not a sign of ecosystem health. The ideal situation would be a balanced predator community with sharks, groupers, and morays all present at natural densities. But in the reality of today's heavily fished reefs, moray populations may be one of the few indicators that some top-down control is still functioning. Morays also contribute to nutrient cycling on reefs. When they consume prey, they're not perfectly efficient digesters. Some nutrients pass through their digestive systems and are excreted back into the reef environment in forms that can be used by other organisms. Additionally, when morays tear apart large prey using their body knotting technique, bits of tissue can be scattered through the reef, providing food for scavengers and detritivores. Nothing goes to waste in a healthy reef ecosystem, and morays contribute to the complex web of nutrient flow that keeps the system functioning. The crevices and caves that morays inhabit as daytime refuges can become important microhabitats for other organisms. Some smaller fish and invertebrates will shelter near a moray's den, possibly gaining protection from the eel's presence. While the moray might occasionally eat these neighbors, it's also true that many reef predators will avoid areas where a large moray is known to reside, so there may be a net protective benefit for small species that can coexist with the eel without becoming prey. Morays also play roles in energy transfer between different parts of reef ecosystems. Some species hunt in seagrass beds or sandy areas, but retreat to rocky reefs or coral structures for daytime shelter. By feeding in one habitat and residing in another, they're moving energy and nutrients between these habitats, linking them in ways that might not be obvious from simply mapping where different organisms live. The ecological importance of morays extends to their role as hosts for parasites and symbionts. Like all living creatures, morays harbor various parasites, some external like copepods and isopods, others internal like nematodes and flukes. While we often think of parasites as purely negative, they're actually important components of ecosystem biodiversity. Many parasite species are highly specialized, found only on particular host species, and they contribute to overall ecosystem complexity. The cleaner shrimp that service morays, as we've discussed, are feeding primarily on these parasites, and in doing so they're providing a link in the food web between the parasites, the eel, and the shrimp. Morays are also indicators of reef health in some respects. Because they're relatively long-lived and require stable habitat with adequate shelter and prey, their presence and abundance can tell us something about the condition of a reef. A reef with a healthy diversity and abundance of morays is likely a reef with good structural complexity, adequate prey populations, and relatively intact ecological relationships. Conversely, if moray populations decline or disappear from a reef, it might signal problems with habitat degradation, overfishing of prey species, or other environmental stresses. However, it's important to note that using any single species as an indicator has limitations. Ecosystems are complex, and many factors can affect the distribution and abundance of any given species. Still, as part of a suite of indicators, morays can provide valuable information to marine ecologists and conservation managers trying to assess reef health and track changes over time. Climate change is adding a new dimension to the ecological role of morays. As ocean temperatures rise and coral bleaching events become more frequent and severe, reef structures are degrading in many locations. Dead coral loses its structural complexity relatively quickly as physical and biological erosion break down the skeleton. This habitat simplification could negatively affect morays, which depend on crevices and caves for shelter. However, morays might also prove more resilient than some other reef species because they can utilize non-coral structures like rocky reefs, and they have a relatively wide thermal tolerance compared to many tropical reef species. Ocean acidification, another consequence of increased atmospheric carbon dioxide, threatens to further compromise reef structure by making it harder for corals and other calcifying organisms to build their skeletons. How this will ultimately affect moray populations is uncertain, but anything that degrades reef habitat complexity is likely to have negative consequences for species like morays that depend on that complexity. Understanding the ecological importance of moray eels reminds us that every species in an ecosystem is connected to others through feeding relationships, competition, cooperation, and more subtle interactions. Morays are threads in the intricate tapestry of reef life, and pulling on one thread can affect the whole fabric in ways we might not fully anticipate. Conserving moray populations means conserving the habitats they depend on and the prey species they feed on, and in doing so, we're helping to maintain the overall health and resilience of coral reef ecosystems that support incredible biodiversity and provide vital services to human communities. As we draw toward the close of our journey, Let's consider the current status of moray eels and what the future might hold for these remarkable animals. The good news is that moray eels as a group are not currently facing an immediate extinction crisis. Most species are not listed as threatened or endangered on the IUCN Red List. Their wide distribution, relatively good reproductive output, and the fact that they're not heavily targeted by commercial fisheries all work in their favor. However, this doesn't mean that morays are free from threats or that we can be complacent about their conservation. The primary threat to moray eels is the same threat facing most reef organisms: the degradation and destruction of coral reef habitats due to climate change, coastal development, pollution, and destructive fishing practices. Coral reefs are among the most threatened ecosystems on Earth. Rising ocean temperatures cause coral bleaching events that can kill vast expanses of coral. Ocean acidification makes it harder for corals to grow and maintain their structures. Coastal development brings sediment runoff that smothers reefs, and pollution from agricultural runoff and sewage can poison reef organisms and promote algae overgrowth. For morays, which depend on the structural complexity of reefs for shelter and hunting, habitat degradation is a serious concern. A reef that has been degraded, where corals have died and the structure has begun to collapse, offers fewer suitable crevices for morays to inhabit. Fewer morays can be supported on a simplified reef than on a structurally complex one. While morays can utilize non-coral rocky habitats, the loss of coral reefs would still represent a major reduction in available habitat, particularly in tropical areas where morays reach their greatest diversity. Climate change presents multiple challenges beyond direct habitat loss. Shifting ocean temperatures are causing many marine species to alter their ranges, moving toward the poles as tropical waters become too warm. Some moray species might be able to follow these shifts, expanding into areas that were previously too cool for them. But other species might find themselves squeezed out as conditions at the warm end of their range become unsuitable and barriers prevent movement to cooler waters. Changes in ocean chemistry and temperature can also affect the prey species that morays depend on. If fish, crustacean, and cephalopod populations decline due to environmental stress, morays will have less food available, and changes in the timing of prey abundance, such as shifts in breeding seasons or larval availability, could create mismatches where morays are hunting at times when prey is less available than it historically was. Fishing pressure is generally not a direct threat to most moray species, because, as we've discussed, morays are not preferred food fish due to ciguatera concerns. However, morays can be caught as bycatch in various fishing operations, and in some areas they're targeted for the aquarium trade. Sustainable collection practices are important for ensuring that wild populations aren't depleted to supply the aquarium hobby. Some species, particularly the more colorful and distinctive ones like ribbon eels and dragon morays, are in higher demand in the aquarium trade, and there have been concerns about over-harvesting in some locations. Another indirect fishing-related threat is the removal of predators and competitors. We've noted that moray populations seem to increase in areas where sharks and large groupers have been heavily fished, while morays themselves might benefit in the short term from reduced competition and predation. The overall ecosystem degradation caused by removing these apex predators has negative consequences that could ultimately affect morays as well. Unbalanced ecosystems are less resilient to other stressors and more prone to collapse. What can be done to help conserve moray eels and ensure their future? First and foremost, protecting and restoring coral reef habitats is essential. This means addressing climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions globally. It means establishing marine protected areas where reefs can recover from past damage and where fishing pressure is reduced or eliminated. It means improving coastal water quality by treating sewage, reducing agricultural runoff, and controlling sediment pollution from development. These actions benefit not just morays but the thousands of other species that depend on reef ecosystems. Specific conservation measures for morays could include regulations on collection for the aquarium trade, ensuring that harvesting is sustainable and doesn't deplete wild populations. Education of divers and snorkelers about how to safely observe morays without disturbing them or risking bites is also valuable. Promoting ecotourism operations that allow people to appreciate morays in the wild can provide economic incentives for conservation while reducing the demand for captured specimens. Research is also a form of conservation. The more we understand about moray biology, ecology, and behavior, the better equipped we are to make informed conservation decisions. Given how much remains unknown about moray reproduction, larval ecology, and population dynamics, there's plenty of scope for research that could inform conservation strategies. For instance, understanding connectivity between moray populations, how larva dispersal links different reefs, can help in designing networks of marine protected areas that maintain genetic diversity and allow for population replenishment. Public awareness and appreciation are powerful tools for conservation. When people understand and value moray eels, not as monsters to be feared, but as fascinating animals that play important ecological roles, they're more likely to support conservation measures. Natural history documentaries, aquarium exhibits, and educational programs all contribute to building this appreciation. Looking ahead, the future for moray eels is tied to the future of coral reefs and the broader ocean environment. If we can successfully address climate change, reduce pollution, manage fisheries sustainably, and protect critical habitats, then morays will likely continue to thrive across their current range. They've survived for millions of years, adapting to past environmental changes, and they have the potential to adapt to future changes if we don't push conditions beyond the limits of their adaptability. But if we fail to address these challenges, if reefs continue to degrade and ocean conditions continue to deteriorate, then morays, along with countless other reef species, will face an uncertain future. Some species might adapt and persist, others might shift their ranges, but there would almost certainly be losses, populations declining, ranges contracting, species disappearing. The responsibility for choosing which path we take lies with us. The morays themselves have no voice in these decisions. They can only continue doing what they've always done, hunting in the reef shadows, resting in their crevices, participating in the ancient cycles of life and death that have sustained them for eons. The choice of what kind of ocean we leave for future generations, an ocean still graced by the presence of moray eels in all their diversity, or an impoverished ocean where these remarkable animals are rare or absent, that choice is ours to make. And now, as our journey through the world of moray eels comes to a close, let yourself sink even deeper into rest. The images and stories we've shared tonight, they're still there, drifting through the quiet spaces of your mind, like those leptocephalus larvae drifting through the dark currents of the open ocean. Moray eels have been part of the ocean's fabric for millions of years, long before humans ever glimpsed the sea. They were here when the reef ecosystems we know today were still forming, when the continents were arranged differently, when species we'll never know swam in ancient waters. And they're here now in this moment, as you rest and breathe, hunting in reefs around the world, hiding in their shadowed crevices, participating in the endless cycle of life. You've learned tonight that these creatures, so often misunderstood and feared, are architects of balance in their ecosystems. They're hunters refined by evolution to perfection, patient ambush predators with innovations found nowhere else in nature. They're partners in remarkable cooperative relationships, working with groupers and being tended by tiny shrimp in acts of trust and mutualism. They're survivors, resilient and adaptable, shaped by deep time and countless generations into the forms we see today. Every atom in your body was forged in the heart of stars, and many of those atoms have almost certainly passed through the ocean at some point in Earth's history. You are connected to the sea in ways both literal and profound, and through understanding creatures like moray eels, you touch something ancient and wild, something that exists beyond human time and human concerns. As you drift towards sleep, imagine one more time a coral reef at night. The water is warm and dark, full of suspended particles that catch the faint bioluminescent glow of plankton disturbed by passing fins. A moray emerges from its crevice, its body a fluid shadow moving through the reef's labyrinth. It hunts not with urgency, but with patience, an ancient patience learned over evolutionary time. It's perfectly adapted to this place, to this life, and it asks nothing more than the opportunity to continue existing as it has existed, as its ancestors existed, in the timeless rhythms of the reef. You are safe, you are warm, you are drifting in the gentle current of sleep. The moray eels of the world are swimming and hunting, and resting in their dens, living their lives beneath the waves, and somewhere in the dark open ocean, countless invisible larvae are drifting, each one a potential future, each one carrying the genetic instructions to build another serpentine reef predator, another link in an unbroken chain stretching back into the deep past and forward into an unknowable future. Sleep now, rest deeply, And know that the ocean keeps its secrets and its wonders, its shadow-dwelling architects and its ancient partnerships, ready for you to discover again in your dreams or when next you return to listen. Good night.